I would like to thank all the Council members for sponsoring the draft resolution, which is now a presidential text. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to document S/2025/109, the report of the Secretary General on the situation in Afghanistan and its implication for international peace and security. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/161 please raise their hand? The result as the voting is as follows. The draft resolution received 15 votes in favor. The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously as Resolution 2777 of 2025. I'll now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Madam President. China welcomes the unanimous adoption by the Security Council of Resolution 2777, which extends the mandate of the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan for 1 year. This demonstrates the Council's strong support for the mission and the people in Afghanistan. China is very pleased to have initiated the consultation process on the draft resolution last month in February. In March, we worked with Denmark, President of the Council, to advance subsequent consultations, and finally, we arrived at a text acceptable to all members. We would like to thank each and every Security Council member for their constructive participation, and in particular, we would like to extend our special thanks to Denmark for its friendly cooperation. The resolution renews the firm commitments to Afghanistan's sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity, and national unity. The resolution captures the positions, expectations, and concerns of the Security Council regarding the current multiple challenges in Afghanistan in light of the evolving circumstances. The resolution notes the problems confronting Afghanistan, such as insufficient economic and humanitarian funding and blocked aid. It calls for greater assistance and reiterates the necessity to help Afghanistan rebuild its banking and financial system. The assets of the Afghan Central Bank are to be utilized to benefit the Afghan people. The resolution emphasizes that women should enjoy equal rights to education, employment, and participation in public life. It expresses the hope that the Afghan interim government will adjust policies that restrict women's rights. The resolution also calls for strengthened measures with regard to terrorism, narcotics, SALWs, and refugees. Afghanistan is now at a critical stage in its peaceful reconstruction. It is incumbent upon the international community to urgently provide more support in terms of development, humanitarian assistance, narcotics control, and the fight against terrorism. There is also the need to have more engagement with the Afghan interim government to achieve positive interactions. We hope that the interim government in Afghanistan will take more visible actions and respond positively to the legitimate concerns of the international community. We support UNAMA in continuing its bridging role to synergize the efforts of the international community and help Afghanistan to reintegrate further into the community of the nations. China stands ready to work with members of the Security Council, follow closely the situational development in Afghanistan, push for more effective actions, and provide more assistance in resolving issues on this file. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, The Russian Federation voted in favor of the Security Council resolution today, the resolution which extended the mandate of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, for a period of 12 months. We welcome the efforts of our Chinese and Danish colleagues with a view to finding compromise solutions with due regard for the reality on the ground. The outcome is a collective product emphasizing support for the Afghan people in building a peaceful and prosperous Afghanistan, an Afghanistan that's free from terrorism and narcotic drugs. The main thing is that the tasks of UNAMA remain unchanged. We believe that the established parameters do allow the mission to fully fulfill its mandate and do its activities in Afghanistan at a critical time for the country. We note the selfless efforts of UN personnel in Afghanistan, and specifically the head of UNAMA, Ms. Otunbayeva. They have been discharging their mandate under very testing conditions, and doing this in good faith. We stand convinced that consistent support by the Security Council to the efforts of UNAMA do send a strong signal to Afghans about our overall commitment as the international community to long-awaited peace and stability in this long-suffering country. The imperative was and remains maintaining pragmatic cooperation between UNAMA and the de facto authorities with a view to discussing a whole host of issues in keeping with UNAMA's mandate. A priority among them is the mission's efforts on the humanitarian front and its ability to discharge its duties as regards the coordination of international humanitarian assistance being offered to the country, extending assistance first and foremost to the most vulnerable groups, women, children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. This is particularly important given the unresolved issue of frozen assets, as well as unprecedented unilateral sanctions. We stand convinced that building long-term peace in Afghanistan is impossible without the formulation of a comprehensive and realistic approach, the ultimate aim thereof being the international reintegration of Afghanistan. The basis for this is an objective and thought-through assessment and patient dialogue with the de facto authorities, including UN auspices. There are no alternatives to this, nor can there be. This is what a swift exit from the current deadlock hinges on, as does UNAMA fully and successfully implementing the tasks entrusted to it. I thank you.
And I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President. Pakistan has voted in favor of the resolution adopted as 2777/2025, which extends the mandate of UNAMA by 1 year. My government remains committed to cooperating with UNAMA and Special Representative Otunbayeva in promoting peace, security, and development in Afghanistan, which confronts multiple challenges of development, drugs, and terrorism. The initial draft of this resolution was circulated by China and Pakistan. We welcome Denmark's role as presidency in facilitating this resolution, and we welcome its unanimous adoption. Madam President, apart from the need for adequate humanitarian assistance to destitute Afghans, Pakistan has consistently asserted that the foremost among the challenges faced in Afghanistan is terrorism within and from Afghanistan. The Taliban government has not been effective in eliminating ISIS-Daesh. It has tolerated several other terrorist groups and is complicit in the cross-border attacks against Pakistan by the TTP, together with the BLA and the Majid Brigade. Last week, the BLA and the Majid Brigade launched an attack on a passenger train in Balochistan province of Pakistan, held hundreds of hostages on the train, and killed 25 innocent people. 33 terrorists were killed by Pakistani special forces in a bold rescue operation. Throughout the attack, the terrorists were in direct contact with their handlers in Afghanistan, from where the attack was planned and directed. We also have evidence that this attack was initiated and financed by our principal adversary, using its proxies in Afghanistan. Madam President, yesterday, a Bloomberg article headlined, I quote, "Pakistan's economy is back, but so is terrorism," unquote. This is no accident. The train attack and other such terrorist attacks that are taking place against Pakistan are clearly designed to destabilize Pakistan and, in particular, to disrupt Pakistan's cooperation with China and the implementation of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Madam President, Pakistan has therefore legitimately demanded that the international community and the Security Council address terrorism within and from Afghanistan as a matter of priority. We appreciate the press statement issued by the Council on 14 February, which, and I quote, condemned in the strongest terms the heinous and cowardly terrorist attack on the Jafar Express and the taking of passengers as hostages. The members of the Council have, and I quote again, underlined the need to hold perpetrators, organizers, financiers, and sponsors of these reprehensible acts of terrorism accountable and to bring them to justice, unquote. And it also called on all states to cooperate actively with Pakistan to this end. Pakistan is also gratified that the resolution adopted by the Council today has, in preamble paragraph 7, expressed, and I quote, serious concern over the presence of terrorist groups in Afghanistan, unquote, and further reaffirmed its, quote, demand that the territory of Afghanistan should not be used to threaten or attack any country, to plan or finance terrorist acts, or to shelter and train terrorists, and that no Afghan group or individual should support terrorists operating on the territory of any country, unquote. The resolution has also called on the Taliban to take active measures to combat terrorism. Madam President, the Security Council and its counter-terrorism machinery must also take such active measures to secure implementation of our decisions to address the challenge of terrorism within and from Afghanistan, particularly from ISIL-K, Al-Qaeda, the TTP, BLA, and the Majid Brigade. These terrorist organizations pose a serious threat to peace and security in Afghanistan, in the region, and globally. Pakistan will propose some concrete steps to enable the United Nations to achieve these counter-terrorism objectives. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I give the floor now to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of A3+, namely Algeria, Guyana, Sierra Leone, and my own country, Somalia. The A3+ welcomes the unanimous adoption of this presidential text and commends the co-facilitators, China and Denmark, for the constructive engagement during the negotiation process. The renewal of UNAMA mandate reflects the unity of the Council in fostering prosperity and stability in Afghanistan, as well as advancing the well-being of its people. We encourage the international community to enhance coordination and coherence of efforts to address the various challenges the country faces, as outlined in the resolution we just adopted related to humanitarian access, economic development, governance, human rights situation, including the ban on women and girls on the access to the education and employment, counterterrorism, and counter narcotics. While we reiterate our firm commitment for the sovereignty and independence of Afghanistan, we renew our call for an inclusive approach underpinned by respect for the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all Afghans. A3+ reaffirms its unwavering support for the critical role of UNAMA and its continued field presence and operational effectiveness. We also express our deep appreciation for the tireless efforts of the Special Representative of the Secretary General and UNAMA personnel. A3+ remains committed to working closely with the Security Council and international partners to advance peace and security in Afghanistan. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. The Republic of Korea is pleased to have presented and voted in favor of this resolution alongside our fellow members of the Security Council. We appreciate the efforts of the February and March presidencies of the Security Council, China, and Denmark in facilitating this process. From the very start, the Republic of Korea hoped to see three key elements reflected in this year's UNAMA mandate renewal. We are encouraged to see all of them included in the text before us. First, we sought the preservation of UNAMA's robust and comprehensive mandate. Second, we called for an update in the preambular section to reflect the Council's views on the various challenges facing Afghanistan. This marks the first update of its kind since 2022. The Council's consensual messages on critical issues such as grave human rights abuses, the dire humanitarian and economic situation, terrorism, narcotics, and refugees will provide valuable context for UNAMA's operations moving forward. Furthermore, we hope that the new paragraph on natural disasters will assist UNAMA in addressing the wide-ranging destabilizing impacts of climate and environment-related challenges. Lastly, we emphasized the importance of maintaining the Council's vigilance on the situation in Afghanistan through quarterly reporting. Madam President, I'd like to close by reaffirming that the betterment of the Afghan people, including women, girls, and minorities, will remain a priority for the Republic of Korea throughout this term on the Security Council. Thank you.
Representative of the Republic of Korea for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States welcomes the renewal of the UNAMA mandate. We thank Council members for their diligent efforts to achieve consensus on this presidential text, which was facilitated by the Council's presidents in February and March. Today, the Council sent a message of its support for UNAMA. This adoption ensures that UNAMA remains a partner for the people of Afghanistan and the international community. We call on UNAMA to strengthen its efforts to promote Afghans' enjoyment of human rights, particularly for women and girls. We support UNAMA's work to help address the widespread humanitarian crisis and stabilize the economy, promote peace and stability, and facilitate dialogue among all relevant Afghan political actors and stakeholders. The United States appreciates the efforts of UNAMA staff on the ground. We recognize that they are doing important work under difficult and often dangerous conditions. UNAMA's reporting is important to informing this Council's decisions on Afghanistan. As the SRSG reported last week, it is up to the Taliban to demonstrate they are willing to take the necessary steps to meet their counterterrorism commitments and respect Afghanistan's international legal obligations, as envisioned in the UN's independent assessment. While we appreciate UNAMA's efforts to implement the independent assessment, UNAMA cannot substitute for the mechanisms needed to realize its goals. We reiterate our calls on the UN Secretary General to implement UN Security Council Resolution 2721. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement, and I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Denmark. Today, this Council delivered on its mandate. In one united, strong voice, we showed the Afghan people that we have not forgotten them. As President of the Council, Denmark was proud to co-lead negotiations with China towards a one-year extension of UNAMA's mandate. Let me thank all Council members for their constructive engagement and flexibility throughout the process, which has led to this text being put forward as a presidential text. Colleagues, for the first time since 2022, UNAMA's mandate has been renewed with important updates reflecting the latest developments on the ground. For Denmark, it is particularly important that the continued and deteriorating human rights situation, especially for women and girls, is reflected. The Council's message is clear. Women play an indispensable role in Afghan society. Their full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation in all stages of public life and decision-making must be ensured. With the extension of UNAMA's mandate, the UN will be able to continue its important work to this end. To restore Afghans' abilities to exercise their human rights, especially those of women and girls and members of minority communities. As the Taliban continues to systematically persecute and erase women and girls from Afghan society, it is more important than ever that UNAMA emphasize this work, and that UNAMA will continue to address the widespread humanitarian and economic crisis, promote peace and stability, and facilitate dialogue among all relevant Afghan political actors and stakeholders. That it supports the rights of all Afghans. That it answers to the countless calls for accountability, including from civil society representatives such as Asad Ras Mohammed just last week in this chamber. We stress the importance of accountability and full respect for international law. Persistent impunity is a driver of new serious international crimes. Denmark commends the incredible work done by UNAMA's staff on the ground, including the UN's work to support peace and stability in Afghanistan and to advance respect for all Afghans' human rights and fundamental freedoms. In closing, let me reaffirm Denmark's full solidarity with the Afghan people. I now resume the function as President of the Council, and now give the floor to the representative of Afghanistan.
Madam President, distinguished members of the Security Council, we express our sincere gratitude for the unanimous adoption of this resolution and for your unwavering commitment to peace, stability, and human rights in Afghanistan. We thank the current and former presidents of the Council for their leadership in facilitating its adoption. This resolution demonstrates the international community's dedication to addressing the dire situation facing our country. We fully support UNAMA's vital role in Afghanistan. Its presence is imperative for promoting peace, stability, and inclusive governance, particularly in monitoring and reporting on human rights violations, including the deteriorating situation of women and girls, in a transparent and impartial manner. This resolution rightly acknowledges Afghanistan's multifaceted challenges: a devastating economic crisis, escalating humanitarian needs, rampant human rights violations, and the growing threat of terrorism. And it highlights the heartbreaking reality that Afghan women and girls continue to be deprived of their most basic rights to education, employment, and participation in public life. The Taliban's continued failure and unwillingness to address the situation, engage constructively, and establish a just, inclusive, and representative system of governance has impeded Afghanistan's prospects for peace, stability, and prosperity, leading our country into isolation and poverty. Madam President, we strongly support this Council's call for the immediate reversal of all policies that violate the fundamental rights of women and girls. Their empowerment is not only a moral imperative, but also critical for sustainable peace and development. Furthermore, UNAMA and other UN agencies' continued presence in Afghanistan is essential for humanitarian aid delivery, human rights protection, and facilitating dialogue toward an inclusive political settlement. We emphasize the importance of these agencies working with impartiality and transparency to ensure international assistance reaches those most in need throughout Afghanistan. We thank all international partners for their firm support for Afghan women during the current session of the Commission on the Status of Women and urge continued unity in international community's principled engagement with Afghanistan. We appreciate the Council's recognition of the dire economic and humanitarian situation in our country, strengthening the banking and financial systems, and enabling the use of Afghanistan's central bank assets through a legitimate government fully committed to its international obligations are crucial steps towards economic recovery. We call on the international community to increase humanitarian assistance to alleviate the suffering of our people. We reiterate the need to combat terrorism in all its forms. Sustainable peace and security must remain paramount goals in counter-terrorism efforts. We also acknowledge the importance of addressing the challenges posed by illicit drug cultivation, production, and trafficking, as well as the exploitation of natural resources. Madam President, we express our gratitude for the United Nations' long-term commitment to supporting the people of Afghanistan. We emphasize the necessity of UNAMA and the Special Representative of Secretary General fully implementing their mandate effectively, transparently, and impartially. Stabilizing Afghanistan and reintegrating it into the international system requires legitimate, inclusive, and representative governance based on justice, the rule of law, and the will of Afghan people. Governance that responds to the needs of both the Afghan people and the international community. Therefore, after over 3 years of political stalemate, we urge that initiating and facilitating an inclusive political dialogue remain a priority alongside other aspects of UNAMA's mandate. We urge all member states to sustain their support for the people of Afghanistan and to continue advocating for a future where all Afghans, regardless of gender or ethnicity, can enjoy their rightful freedoms. We call for continued unity and a coherent approach in the international community's principled engagement with Afghanistan. We look forward to continued constructive engagement with the United Nations and the international community to build a lasting, peaceful, stable, and prosperous future for all Afghans. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Afghanistan for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.